Jerusalem's temple had been destroyed for 70 years. Then nearly 50,000 exiles returned from Babylon and made a shocking decision. Before rebuilding homes, before rebuilding walls, before rebuilding the temple itself, they rebuilt an altar. Why? This is the Restoration Dossier, and the case file begins with a single answer. Because civilizations often survive or die based on what they rebuild first, the journey from Babylon had taken nearly 4 months. The returning exiles expected restoration. Instead, they found devastation. Jerusalem was a ghost city. Its walls were broken, its economy gone, its temple reduced to ash. This was not Solomon's glorious kingdom. This was a burned mountain and a remnant with almost no resources. Humanly speaking, restoration looked impossible. Then Ezra records something remarkable. They built the altar immediately. Not the temple, not the defenses, the altar. Why? Because altars were never merely religious structures. They were covenant claims, declarations of who ruled this ground. And this mountain carried enormous memory. Before architecture could return, the covenant had to return. So Zerubbabel and Jeshua stacked rough, uncut stones onto the exposed bedrock. Simple, primitive, deliberate. The fire returned to Jerusalem before the buildings did. Because civilizations rarely collapse when infrastructure disappears, they collapse when identity disappears. That's why restoration usually begins with foundations, not buildings. Meaning, eventually work began on the temple foundation itself. But this was no golden age, no royal treasury, no armies of laborers, only survivors carrying memories. And those memories divided the crowd. Ezra tells us that when the foundation was laid, 2 sounds filled Jerusalem. The younger generation shouted with joy. The older generation wept because they remembered Solomon's temple, its beauty, its glory, its scale. This new beginning looked painfully small. Hope and grief echoed together across the mountain. Then came opposition, not through armies, through paperwork. Regional officials questioned the builders, filed accusations, appealed to Persian authorities, disrupted supplies. Construction slowed, then stopped. For years, no siege, no invasion, only exhaustion. Because restoration is often resisted not by open enemies, but by systems that slowly wear people down. Step back and look at the larger story. Abraham built altars in this land. David captured this mountain. Solomon built a temple here. Babylon burned it, and now a remnant returns. Not with wealth, not with military power, but with stones, an altar, and a promise. Because restoration rarely begins with grandeur. It begins when survivors decide to rebuild anyway. If you've been following this investigation from Egypt to the Promised Land, and you want the forensic case files, the wind dynamics behind the Red Sea crossing, the scorched summit at the real Mount Sinai, the mud brick collapse at Jericho, then the Exodus to Conquest Master Dossier is waiting. Link in the description. The Second Temple began in weakness. Its foundations looked insignificant compared to what came before. But history often hides its greatest turning points inside small beginnings. These rough stones would prepare the stage for the prophets, the intertestamental world, Herod's expansion, and ultimately, the arrival of the Messiah himself. Zerubbabel didn't rebuild the altar first because it was practical. He rebuilt it because covenant identity always precedes physical restoration. The fire had to return before the walls ever could. Jerusalem's gates still lay burned. Its defenses were shattered. Enemies surrounded it on every side. Soon, one man will quietly ride through Jerusalem at night, surveying the ruins in silence. What follows becomes one of the most remarkable engineering and security operations in biblical history. The Nehemiah audit, engineering the night walls, is next. The next file is already being prepared.